Will AI steal my identity or save it? With today's special guest, Kevin Korte. Today's episode is brought to you by the bestseller ChatGPT Profits. This book is the missing instruction manual to get you up and running with ChatGPT in a matter of minutes. As a special gift, you can get it absolutely free at artificialintelligencepod.com/gift or at the link right below this episode. Make sure to grab your copy before it goes back up to full price. Are you tired of dealing with your boss? Do you feel underpaid and underappreciated? If you want to make it online, fire your boss, and start living your retirement dreams now, then you come to the right place. Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence Podcast Show, where you will learn how to use artificial intelligence to open new revenue streams and make money while you sleep. Presented live from a tropical island in the South Pacific by best-selling author Jonathan Green. Now, here's your host. Now, I'm really interested in your perspective on how AI can actually improve security, because right now what we're seeing a lot of is prevalence of deepfakes, prevalence of pretending to be someone else's voice. And so much of what people are using AI for is mimicking. And I even see people who make AI versions of themselves, and they make these AI video versions of themselves. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're just making it even easier and easier. But for someone like me, there's so much of my voice on the internet. There's enough samples for anyone to easily load it up to 11 Labs, create a voice mimic, and call my mom and pretend to be me. So how can we use AI to actually counteract this and actually increase our security and increase our bioidentifiers?
Great to be here. I think the most important thing to learn from it is that we should see people as more than just their voice and their picture. I mean, if we go into a room to network with someone, we see their body language, but most importantly, we actually talk to them. And then they say things which makes them unique. And it's kind of this famous Turing problem, really, that to figure out whether someone is an AI or not, you ask questions and talk to them. And it's not really the way of communication, but it's actually the content which matters. And going into it, asking ourselves, okay, does it make sense? Does it push us to do something we wouldn't normally do? I think that will be the most prevalent questions. And if you then try to put a technical solution to it, then you can easily see, like, okay, is that tone appropriate for male, or is that person now pushing me to make a wire transfer or to send someone money? And that way you can approach it on a technical level, but technically it will continue to be an arms race of the guy who built the system versus the guy who built the defense for it.
So this is exactly why I kind of think we're going to see a shift towards more person-to-person communication. Because the only way now to know you're talking to a person is to talk face-to-face and then touch them to make sure you feel the warmth of their hand, to make sure they're not a hologram or a robot. So it's almost like we're going to revert back to 1800s business dealing. So I do see that, because more and more trying to get in the technology race, it's like, for a moment, we see there's tons of these AI bots that will call people, and then they make AI bots that will answer the calls, and it's going back and forth. And it's like, how can I disconnect from that particular race? I saw something really interesting in the news recently, and I wanted your perspective on this. Meta, or as we all really call it, Facebook, decided, hey, no one uses Facebook anymore. What if we fill it with a bunch of bots? And it's like, isn't it already? Wait, was it already filled with bots? So what do you think about this too? It seems to me like the bots really only work on people above a certain age to create pseudo engagement. Anyone under like 50 or 60 doesn't really fall for bots anymore, but people older, they fall for these really weird AI generated images of a cat with too many legs or a cake with 700 candles. We see those like really silly images, but it's only because AI stuff is so fresh. Like same thing 10 years ago, like when last technology was new, you can trick the oldest generation. But what do you think about this shift to creating more and more AI bots and thinking that, oh, what people really want to do is talk to an AI, not talk to a real person? Do you think that's the right direction, or it's exactly moving the opposite direction? It's going to push people off of Facebook.
First, I think we should take the age out of it. I think the age is more a Facebook problem than the bot problem. because some of the biggest influencers on Instagram and TikTok are actually bots, and they have followings mostly in not even millennials like myself, but Gen Z, Gen Alpha. So it might be more that the Facebook as a platform and their target group is more the issue than the bots.
I think you're right. That makes sense.
Which also makes sense. If you never go to Facebook, you never fall for the bots there. Yes. In influencing someone with new technology and using it to give like messages, it's the interesting part is what you use it for and what you actually fall for. Because what people can efficiently use it is for making short messages. Like doing a small follow-up. If you send like after your podcast a message, hey, it was great talking to you. And I like these 3 points we talked about. It has a great impact on me remembering the podcast and me putting it out later as a social to point to you. But it'll take up lots of time. And even if you just use a writing tool for writing it to summarize it, it frees up your time and allows you to focus on your next podcast or reading it or doing a follow-up interview. And on the con side, I find it great to get the summary, but do I really care that the email is written by you or by your assistant or by your bot? And I think focusing on these small time wasters, really small but important time wasters, that makes sense to use like imitation features and automate them. You wouldn't want me or my bot to sit here talking to your bot, because there's absolutely no way that will ever throw a curveball. It will just probably take whatever you've done before, combine it with my blog, and then our bots would talk about that, or not even really talk about it, but both putting out the sound bits, and the audience will be wondering like, that's not the question, that's not an answer.
Earlier today, I had a conversation with one of my friends who was asking how I plan my questions for the podcast. And I said, well, I usually have 6 questions and I will ask one of them because how do I know what the other person's going to say? They always surprise me or say something interesting. And it's like, if I can take the pre-written question or what's interesting, I want to chase what's interesting. So it's this different mindset. If you just have 2 bots, everything is pre-written, everything is preordained. There's no surprises. And that's where the interesting thing happens. So I always want to find that, definitely in content. And I think that's why people don't really listen to like AI generated podcasts, or people always think when I say I host an AI podcast, they think that it's an AI generated podcast. I'm like, no, it's me on a podcast. AI is the topic. But I love when people ask that question. I'm like, no, that sounds really boring. I wouldn't create something I wouldn't listen to. Just 2 AIs talking to each other. Whoa. I'm also really interested in this idea of how AI can help improve identity management systems, how it can help us to provide this other direction of security. Because a lot of what we see, unfortunately, on the news is like what's interesting rather than what's useful. Or we see there's a law passed in Tennessee recently I think they called it the Elvis Law, which was like, if you make a song, like a fake song by an artist, and they passed the law because of a TikTok song that was a fake Drake song, but they don't know who made it. And I was like, well, the law wouldn't solve the problem. If you don't know who did it, you can't charge them anyways, right? So I thought it was really, I understand the idea, right? I think that it's kind of the wrong answer. But what is your thought in this space? Because governments are trying to pass laws and they're always a step behind. Like I have my theories, but I would love to hear yours before I give all mine up.
I think 2 points here. First of all, protecting artists' rights, which at least the Tennessee law, as far as I understand, is quite a slippery slope, because if I'm a human imitating another artist, there's nothing stopping me. We can even take it so far as, what's the artist's name? Weird Al Yankovic, who really makes parody songs and can take the music and put it into his new songs. And I don't think that we'll see the law be successful defended when it comes to the first court case. Now, taking cybersecurity regulations in there, yes, we're chasing the tail with regulations, but we're also often going into the point where we really going back to the first answer, we're trying to solve a technical problem or a human problem with a technical solution. It's not that our technology is bad for cybersecurity, it's that we as people try to say it nicely, conserve energy. We're trying to be lazy.
Yeah.
We try to things which don't bore us, but entertain us and keep us engaged. And really good scam emails, which focus on like an individual target, they push us right into that kind of, oh, it's exciting. My boss needs my help. I need to reset his password and send it by email. It's like the urgency of doing it. And AI is great of creating that urgency without feeling overwhelming. Versus when I send something, when I want to create something, it's really easy for me to be like too pushy or to be like, yeah. And we don't solve that kind of human problem with saying like, oh, we need better spam filters.
I think that's really, really clever. I think one of the policies I developed when I was younger is that I don't make rush decisions. So whenever someone's like, you have to decide right now, I go, then the answer is no. Because I always feel like if someone wants you to decide right now, it's because they don't want you to realize that's something bad. They don't want you to read the contract. Like I once dealt with someone who says, oh, I hate getting lawyers involved. They always ruin everything. I was like, oh man, what are you planning to do to me? You know, my whole family's lawyers, and it's like my dad's a lawyer, my sister's a lawyer, my brother-in-law's a lawyer. There's one thing I know: as soon as someone's like, "Oh, don't have your lawyer read this," it means it's got something awful is about to happen to you, right? So, kind of thing. I don't want your thought on it. I feel like you should just own your face and voice. So I don't think like paparazzi should be allowed. I think if someone takes your picture, you own it, not the person who took it, right? Unless they have permission or sign a paper. If you just owned your face, then you would own the AI version of your face. So then if someone made a music that's pretending to be you, right? There's two versions. There's the parody song, which Radio Yankovic does. Parody is a separate category. But if someone makes a song and it's supposed to be this other person, I think the artist should just we should just decide the original person gets a percentage. We should decide what that is. Is it 10%, 50%, 80%? Because there's two creativities. And then it's like, okay, we already know who it's supposed to be. So that whoever did the AI thing gets this percentage and the actual original person gets that percentage. And then we've just decided, like, it's just a simple thing. We said the original person's voice is worth this. And maybe I don't know what to do about people that do, they can make themselves sound like other people. Obviously that I haven't figured that one out. Like, should you have to pay the person you're pretending to be? I don't know. But for AI, like, why do we have to make it so hard? Why not just pay both people? One person's original voice and one person had the idea, right? And modified it.
I think that the hard part isn't to say, okay, you can't imitate someone to be Dre or to be President Biden calling, hey, do something, because we have laws to protect against this kind of imitation. Exactly, because people can imitate your grandson on the phone. And then it's like that famous scam. And we have laws that protect against it, and they apply to AI as well. Problem comes more when you create songs or images that are similar to Dre or similar to the applicant, and which involve 3 or 4 artists or 3 or 4 people. And we see it a lot in sales spots, actually. If you go on LinkedIn, your inbox probably looked like mine. It has like 400 people offering you LinkedIn optimization and lead generation and marketing help.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I actually get a lot of, your podcast is so good, but why is the audio so bad? Or why is it's always like compliment then insult. It's a sandwich, compliment, insult, compliment. Your podcast is good, but this part stinks. I can fix it. And it's like, well, I hate that, but you're exactly right. This kind of mass appeal. So one of the areas that really interests me as well is kind of, what do you think the future of cybersecurity is? Like, as much as we can detect AI now, it continues to get better and better. So the tricks we can use now to detect if you're talking to AI will stop working in 6 months or a year, and you'll have to find new tricks and new ways. But it does usually say something that's a little bit off, but eventually it will get past the point where that doesn't happen anymore because it has enough data from everyone. So what do you see as the future or the intersection of AI and cybersecurity? Because right now, the biggest vulnerability is still people, social engineering.
It will remain the biggest vulnerability. So in that sense, it won't change. With language being off, if you go out today, read Shakespeare, you want to, oh, that's so old and so out of date from the writing style. It's still Shakespeare. It's great to read, but you wouldn't write it. And if you start speaking your pockets in that same rhyme scheme, people were like, okay, it's great for one episode, but 300? I've stopped listening after number 3. And the same is true for AI. Its style isn't there where we are, and it's certainly not there where we are tomorrow, because in a sense, you need tons of data to imitate. But for solving the security issue, yes, we will go back to more in-person meetings. And if you look at sales and the famous, okay, we close deals on the golf course. Golf takes a long time, and it's kind of that relationship building more than the actual game of golf, where I have to admit, I'm the only 3 times I went, I ran the stuff. I sucked at the game, but we still closed the deal. So it wasn't obviously my talent in playing the game. But if you look at a lot of high value, high net worth, they spend a lot of time with people. Even if you would think, why is he spending so much time with it? Versus if you go to deep down into our hustle culture, really, then like, okay, let's do something, but not connect with someone. And I think AI will force us to switch that around, to build more onto our connections. And that puts in an intrinsic security, because you know what the person's going to say, and it gets better grammatically. It's hard to interpret someone's brain, because we kind of filter what we say in the public, at least. Or we should do. Not everyone does, but we should.
You brought up earlier how much we get offered LinkedIn optimization, LinkedIn lead gen, or a lot of people call it they call it personal branding. And what I find is that they always want you to do things to speed up the sales cycle, which are disingenuous. Like when people ask you these questions, like, are you the decision maker? Will the decision maker be in the room with you? As soon as someone says that to me, I hate you. Like it immediately triggers that. So like I meet everyone the same way I met you. Like I meet people through LinkedIn. I do a lot of connection requests, and a lot of people think that if they're not going to be a customer, I don't want them on the podcast. And I'm like, no, less than 1% of people have been on the podcast. A lot less than 1% of people on the podcast are clients of mine. It's very rare. I have people on the show that I find interesting, but people are so surprised that like I actually want them on the show. Like I read your profile, I looked up some stuff. That's why I have specific questions. People are so shocked by that, because every other outbound method is like, let me close in 1 DM or less. And it's like, well, have you never had a bad client? Like everyone has had a client that they regret signing. And if you talk to them beforehand, you can avoid that. A friend of mine earlier today, same thing. He was like, I'm thinking of offering this new service. I was like, it's been 3 months. You're going to call me and tell me you wish you hadn't done that. As soon as you start, I said, yes, you'll make a little extra money now, but it's outside your area of excellence. And you will go, oh my gosh, something went wrong and they're blaming me. And now I lost the big contract because of a small contract. And the only way to learn is to touch the stove sometimes. But all of these methods are about speed or manipulation or pretending to be someone you're not. And the problem is it's really hard to remember who you're pretending to be when you're being somebody else. And when you're creating this speed conversations, I have conversations, like I have this problem, like, and the exact reason that I have someone do the pre-podcast phone calls is because I will stay too long. I book a 15-minute pre-call. I always do an hour because I get interested and I'm having so much fun. And then I don't spend the day doing anything else. So my problem is not that I don't like the calls. It's that I like them too much. And I was trying to explain to someone, I was like, no, everyone I meet, I like. Everyone is really interesting. Everyone has these really cool stories. So I have to sometimes make changes. And then what happens is we try to recapture the magic on the show and people wish they'd listened. I wish I'd recorded the pre-call. So I've learned to make an adjustment. That's why I do that. But all these other methods that are about, I only want to talk to you if I'm for sure. And then I actually go on calls with a lot of those people because I'm curious if they do anything good in lead gen. And they're very, very expensive. And everything they do is, I guess, somewhere on the spectrum between mean and offensive. They ask questions like, how much, like, what's your credit card limit? How much money do you make here and there? Or even like the last question, like you might as well say something like, what's your deepest fear? Or like, what's the thing you regret in life? It's like, feels like you're making a Faustian bargain. And I feel like that is where AI, right? People are trying to do AI for speed and fast, but for relationship building, like there's these tools now where I could have an AI. So people say to me, why don't I have an AI do the call instead of a person? And I was like, because I would hate if someone did that to me so much. Like if I thought I was talking to a person that was an AI, I wouldn't like that at all. And there's versions you can do where it's either I can do a version now where it looks like me and talks like me. And then when it's time for me to do the sale, it switches to the real me. And I was like, that sounds horrible. Like as much as a technology, sometimes we need to ask the question, not can we do it, but should we do it? I would feel if I was talking to you and you started glitching like Max Headroom, the old AI cartoon from the 80s, and I realized you weren't a person, I would be really upset. I'd be like, not happy about that. So why would I want to do that to someone else? So I love that you're saying, I hope we do see this shift towards we use AI for small tasks so we can spend more time doing human to human.
The speed question also leaves out the question of what happens 2 years down the road. I mean, I get the idea. You don't want to spend 6 hours talking to the intern who does a market research analysis, but talking to them like 10 minutes and figuring out they're actually on the way in to be like the decision makers 2-5 years down the road. That can be a really valuable tool to build like long-term growth. All because you can figure out, okay, he's asking intelligent questions. He has the guts to actually reach out, and that can set you up long term. But it doesn't help if you get compensated for leads closed in the next 30 days. And maybe we need to can find different measures of how we measure success instead of, hey, how much money did you make today?
Yeah, I've been in high pressure sales. I used to sell computers over the phone. We had to sell like 30 computers every day. You stayed on the phones until you made enough sales. And it just creates such a high pressure environment, and the metrics are constantly changing and the margin per products are constantly changing. It's super high stress. After I left that job, I had nightmares for 2 years. And most of my best projects, it's so interesting you said that, like have come from people that I knew for 3 years, and then it was the right moment. It's like, I'd rather surround myself, and I love that we're talking about this because I think this is really good. I'd rather surround myself by the right people. And then when it's the right time, it will happen. If you have enough leads coming in, I was trying to explain this to my team. I said, I don't really, I said, if we generate one new client per month, that covers everyone's salary. We generate hundreds of calls per week. So I said, your close rate, which most companies would consider abysmal. I said, but if we get a client I like, each of my clients, when I have a call for them scheduled that week, I look forward to it. So we actually cultivate an environment where we only work with people that we like. And that's the best thing. So I wonder, have you ever basically a deal's come later on because you were nice to someone when they were early on in their career, and then later on it turned around and became a good thing? And it's like, it's such a shocking insight. But I think that's really important. Sometimes just being people like, oh yeah, you're the only one who's nice to me. And it's like, oh, that's all it takes.
We had one of the deals which came at like the double delay. So first the guy reaching out was an intern at the partner, and then they were serving the Department of Defense. So the partner company was serving the Department of Defense. So first we built like, I think, 2 or 3 years that relationship with first the intern, then he graduated, became a full-time employee, and then they won that huge project and project management and everything. Ever take with the government took, I think, another 5 years. But if we take it over the 8 years it took to close the project, it was our most lucrative deal for every one of the years. But a lot of, even my guys said, don't do that. It's just a waste of time, a waste of money. We should focus on other things. I'm like, and it doesn't take much time for months, but that's kind of I'm in a position where I didn't need the commission to come in. So that's kind of, then we're back at the money. We could take the hit and develop that deal.
I think this is exactly where the humanness is what AI can't capture, because AI, it's all about speed. Like, people are using AI. They're doing AI to, like, I can have AI call 1 million people at once. And it's like, well, that's the same strategy of spam email, right? If I email enough people, someone will accidentally click the link. And there is this thing, the je ne sais quoi, that I'm talking to a person, or, you know what, this is a person who was nice to me 4 years ago, or this person looks like someone I was friends with in high school. And removing the need for speed, because most people who are heavy salespeople, they call it like hunting. I'm like, well, I like farming, which is I plant a bunch of seeds and they grow at different rates. And then this becomes a great deal and this becomes a great deal. Like, maybe you and I are friends for 20 years, and in 20 years, something comes up that's a great deal. And it's like, well, was that 20 years wasted? No, because I have hundreds of seeds out there, and one grew this month and one grew that month. And it's, yeah, if you only have one seed or you only do one phone call a year, then of course it's all of this pressure. So I think that this is definitely one of the areas, and that's the key. I think that, like you said, is that we use AI for the small tasks. It allows us to do the tasks that matter. And people always want to use AI to answer their emails. And I'm like, well, don't do that. Use AI to sort the emails, and then you just personally answer the ones that matter. I get hundreds of emails a day. I probably need to read to 5. Only 5 of them need a reply from me. So if I can sort them well, then I can answer the ones that really matter, because I don't want an AI to accidentally answer an email from my mom, or to accidentally send a message to my wife and start a fight. Like, I don't need help doing that. So I love this perspective. And I think that a lot of people will really find this valuable as they're thinking about how AI can actually kind of create a panacea. Like, I already see with the thing we mentioned about Meta, as soon as they implemented all the bots, like, the number of human people just said, oh, I'm not logging in anymore. Like, the actual engagement plummeted, because people go, oh, I'll just go outside then. I'll just go talk to other people. So I think we might actually see a renaissance where people are outside and sitting in the park and looking at the sun. So we might actually see, like, all the social media platforms plummet, because you go, oh, that's just AI's talking to AI. I'll just go outside and talk to a real person. And maybe we'll accidentally make the world a better place.
I think if we learn from the past there, YouTube is a great learning source of how their advertisement strategies went along. First, you had like 5-second advertisement, and they realized, oh, people watch it, let's put more on it. And then we got into, oh, wait, people are using ad blockers now to block it. Oh, we do it server side. And like, oh, people from server side, ad blockers who can block that. And like, no one really asks, okay, is it maybe the problem of how we serve ads? It's like always asking, okay, how can we make sure people see our ads? Which it's the same with the bots. How can we make sure people see our content, and people not asking, oh, are we actually producing something people want to see?
I think that's such a good question. And we've seen a lot of industries where people guess what everyone wants and they guess wrong, or they try to tell me what I want or tell you what you want. It's like, no, I know what I want to watch, right? I'm always baffled. I'm really simple. I watch like Rambo movies and low quality action, and that's the type of books I read. One of my girlfriends in my 20s was like, I feel like if there's a picture of a sword on the cover of a book, you'll read it. I was like, yes, I definitely will. Did you see one? There's a robot. And yet Amazon gives me bad recommendations all the time. Amazon constantly recommends Gone Girl books to me. I've never read one. Why are they still recommending those? So it's like, even the biggest companies in the world still haven't figured out, well, just show me a robot jumping out of a plane and tell me it's like fighting a space battle and it's fighting aliens. I'm reading it. But it's still these algorithms. Exactly. I love what you're saying, is if they would just ask people what they want and then give it to them. And it sounds like a revolutionary idea, but if you just say, like, I remember I used to watch older TV shows when they would have the commercials would just be part of the show. And if they did that and only that, right? Don't do that and the ad breaks, just do one or the other, because they're trying to do things like, oh, you have Hulu, but you have Hulu ad free, but we're still going to do ads anyway. So it's like, what?
Yeah.
Don't do that. Just going to make people hate you. Like, I pay for YouTube Premium, which is very expensive. It's more expensive than Netflix. So it's my job is to do, I watch tons and tons of tutorial videos. I post in a YouTube channel. So for me, it's worth it to not see the ads. That's why I just wished every creator didn't have their own ads in every video as well. It's like, oh my gosh, there's still extra ads there too. It's like, you can't get away from them. It's like one or the other. If I'm paying $15, I don't want to see any ads. Like, I just don't want to see any ads. But I don't know how we're going to figure it out. Hopefully people start to think, well, let's just give people what they want. And I think what people want is a better experience, a better connection, and AI can help us get there. I think the idea of AI replacing the human interaction, which is what most people demonstrate, I don't think that's the right path. Like when I watch the videos where they show a commercial, they say, you can use this AI to take a picture of someone's dog and find out what kind of dog it is. Like, you can also just ask them. All you've replaced is literally a one sentence conversation. Or you see a restaurant, you take a picture to see what's on the menu. You can look in the window and see the menu. Like, you don't even have to talk to a person. It's like they keep trying to outsource the most valuable thing in the world, which is talking to other people. So I love your perspective. I think this has really been great, Kevin. And I think people are really going to enjoy this episode. Where can they kind of find out, what's the best place to find you online, find out more about the projects you're working on, and kind of see how you're changing the world and some of the amazing things that you're doing as far as AI, governments, and kind of some of the things happening in the government sector, some of these cool things?
I think the best entry point is always my own website, because that's kind of where you get my voice unfiltered, and it's korte.co, so korte.co. And otherwise you can find me on social, but that's a more curated voice than just a pure and sometimes wrong things, which I like to post on my blog, because after all, we don't know what's coming tomorrow. We can always get today's perspective.
Perfect. I think people are going to love this episode. Like I said, I had a really good time. I'm glad we connected. Thank you so much for being here for another amazing episode of the Artificial Intelligence Podcast. Thanks for listening to today's episode. Starting with AI can be scary. ChatGPT Profits is not only a bestseller, but also the missing instruction manual to make mastering ChatGPT a breeze. Bypass the hard stuff and get straight to success with ChatGPT Profits. As always, I would love for you to support the show by paying full price on Amazon. We can get it absolutely free for a limited time at artificialintelligencepod.com/gift. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Artificial Intelligence Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. We'll be back next Monday with more tips and tactics on how to leverage AI to escape that rat race. Head over to artificialintelligencepod.com now to see past episodes, leave a review, and check out all of our socials.